Hi everyone, I am Julia from the Me, Myself and I Instagram account, and I'm really happy to be on the Addictive Brain Instagram stories today to answer any questions you might have about my area of research. So I am a second year PhD student at University College London, and my area of research is focusing on the neurobiology of Alzheimer's disease. So I'm going to drop a question box on this story, and you can ask me any questions you want about Alzheimer's disease, dementia, neuroscience, neurodegeneration, being a PhD student, whatever you want to ask me, feel free to drop it in the box below, and then I will be on the Addictive Brain stories answering some of these questions. Thank you. Right, so let's get this Q&A underway. First of all, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to what Alzheimer's disease is and what dementia is, so everyone is aware, and then this might spark a few more questions. Dementia is a group of disorders which are characterised by a decline in cognitive and mental function, and these are normally caused by neurodegeneration, which is the death of nerve cells in the brain. And what Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia, and it is the most common type. So a lot of people interchange the words dementia and Alzheimer's disease, but it is its own distinct dementia. Alzheimer's disease is characterised by a progressive loss of memory, and it is diagnosed by doctors and clinicians, but in order to get an official diagnosis of the condition, this requires a post-mortem exam of the brain. The official diagnosis of Alzheimer's comes from identifying two neurological pathologies. These are defined as extracellular amyloid plaques and intracellular neurofibrillary tau tangles, a mouthful. How these two pathologies are involved in Alzheimer's disease is still highly debated, and the main hypothesis is that the extracellular amyloid plaques cause the downstream neurofibrillary tau tangles, and this somehow causes neurons in the brain to die. My research is focusing on the tau pathology, which is found inside neurons, and I'm looking at tau across different types of Alzheimer's disease. So people who have very fast Alzheimer's disease and people who have different clinical symptoms but still have Alzheimer's disease. So because the official diagnosis of Alzheimer's comes from post-mortem, it is the case that you get very different clinical presentations of the disease, but these patients still have the amyloid and tau. So I'm trying to sort of differentiate these in terms of their tau pathology. So there you have a brief introduction to what Alzheimer's is and what I am looking at. And so now let's get to answering these questions. I've just explained that the involvement of amyloid and tau in Alzheimer's disease is still debated, but I think we still need to keep researching them because we still don't really know what they do, so we can't rule them out yet. So yeah, we need to keep researching. All inherited forms of Alzheimer's disease are caused by mutations in amyloid processing genes, so it is going to be involved in the disease in some way, but we're not really sure how yet. So the how is what we need to answer. And tau pathology is found not just in Alzheimer's disease, but in many neurodegenerative conditions. So doing research on tau is really important because it could tell us about other neurodegenerative conditions as well. So I only did one degree, which was an undergrad master's combined. In the UK, we can do a 4-year degree called an MSci, and that was in straight neuroscience, so neuroscience for 4 years. I was a late bloomer to the idea that science was going to be my career, but I decided I wanted to do neuroscience during my final year of school when I did a drama play based on Alzheimer's disease and on the lobes of the brain and how they degenerate. And my family are really affected by Alzheimer's disease, so I started my undergrad degree in 2012 with the main question of why do some people get Alzheimer's and why don't others? And I'm still trying to answer that now. Main advice would be to write everything down. Everything, no matter how small the detail may seem, write it down because you'll need it in a few years. Get a good system for organising your notes, your schedule, and do it from day one. So that's it for now. I'll leave another question box here so I can keep answering questions into tomorrow about my research and my degree and my general thoughts about doing a PhD. So have a lovely Saturday night. Hi! I hope everyone's having a really nice and relaxing Sunday. So I'm here to answer some questions that have been left in comments and on previous stories. So let's get going. In case you missed yesterday, what I'm talking about is my research, which is based on Alzheimer's disease, a common form of dementia, and then also about being a PhD student and what doing a PhD is like. Amyloid plaque pathology is one of the defining features of Alzheimer's disease, and it's been hypothesised that the protein that causes these plaques is involved somehow in causing neurodegeneration. The confirmation of these plaques is done at post-mortem, but their presence can be identified using PET scanning, and this is how patients are selected for Alzheimer's disease clinical trials. Dementia is a group of disorders, and Alzheimer's disease is the most common dementia. So there are many types of dementia, like vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. So dementia is the group, Alzheimer's disease is a dementia. Tau pathology is the other major pathology found in Alzheimer's disease patients, and the tau protein in these patient brains is found in a hyperphosphorylated state, which means it has phosphate groups added to certain amino acids. Tau's normal role is to stabilise microtubules in axons, which helps with intracellular protein trafficking. And tau's phosphorylation is really important because it allows the tau molecule to detach from the microtubules, so promotes flexibility of this network. Hyperphosphorylation of tau isn't great because it means it permanently detaches from the microtubules and aggregates in the cell. And this is what causes these intracellular aggregates and then somehow promotes neuronal death. So to finally answer your question, I think there must be something in the brain that, as a consequence of age, tau becomes hyperphosphorylated, because this pathology is found in many neurodegenerative diseases. My advice would be to show your passion, and this can be done through essays, through group assignments, and in interviews especially. So if you're really keen about an area of science and you get an interview in that subject, show how passionate you are. I'm not over familiar with this work, but in brief, I think the nun study was done because they were looking at Alzheimer's disease onset in a group of nuns, because nuns are brought up in a very similar environment. This study was trying to control for environment, and the conclusions were that nuns with poor literacy skills in early life were more likely to go on to develop Alzheimer's disease. Like with a lot of environmental studies, this work is purely observational and based on correlation, so we need to have some more solid scientific evidence before conclusions are properly made. I think eventually we will have a therapy for Alzheimer's disease, but I think the neurodegenerative field is about 20 years behind the cancer research field. There hasn't been the funding, there hasn't been the recognition that these are actually diseases. In order to get to that successful therapeutic, we need so much more basic research. We just don't know the mechanism of the disease, so that is what we need as a baseline to get a therapeutic treatment that's gonna work. You asked me a lot of interesting questions. I'll try and address them all. So the first question you asked me was about, is amyloid the only cause of Alzheimer's? We don't even know if amyloid causes Alzheimer's yet. We know that amyloid must be involved in some way because it is responsible for genetic variants of the disease, but the exact mechanism in which plaque pathology contributes towards the disease is still up in the air. You also asked me about lifestyle factors. Again, all of these studies are correlation based, but it's been advised that factors such as obesity, lack of exercise, lack of cognitive stimulation, and lack of social interaction contribute to Alzheimer's. And finally, in terms of research progress with Alzheimer's disease, I think now we have the technology to allow us to answer some of these really big questions about the disease. So in the next few years, I think there'll be more groundbreaking research about the mechanisms of the disease. I hope I've answered most of your questions on Alzheimer's disease and on being a PhD student. But if you have any more, feel free to direct message me on my account, and you never know, I might post some work that you're interested in too. Thank you.